Hi, this is Mark Laughlin with the Ambidextrous Gunfighter. In light of the increasingly target-rich environment we face, I've been thinking I might need to switch back to more of a full-size pistol rather than the Hellcat. So I'm thinking I may start carrying the Walther PPQ, which has 15 rounds, a little bit longer muzzle, and of course a terrific trigger, longer sight radius. So with 2 magazines, I'd have like 30 rounds. 3 magazines, I'd have 45 rounds. And also it has of course, what I really like is the paddle magazine release and ambidextrous slide releases. So I went looking for an inside the waistband holster for the Walther PPQ. Of course, doing inside the waistband on a pistol this size is sort of pushing the limits. But I did find one that looked promising, Dara. I believe it's out of North Carolina. And so when you open up the box, it's a really nice box, kind of gives you a really good first impression of what you're receiving here. We got the holster there. We'll come back to that. And it does come with some little additional parts to do the whole to make the claw, to adjust the height of the claw to help push the pistol grip back into your body. Now, I know the claws are all the fashion on inside the waistband holsters. I'm not a fan of them. I think it's just a fashionable thing right now. So we're gonna dispense with the claw. Now the reason I don't think the claw is needed is because with the mount here being kind of behind the thickest part of the holster, the belt is already going to pull this holster back and therefore pull the pistol grip back into your body as it is. So the claw is just some unneeded additional bulk that I'm going to eliminate, get rid of. Also, the claw is actually mounted in this bracket that's underneath the belt hanger, and that just causes the belt hanger to extend out about another ½ an inch, which brings the belt basically off the top of off the side of the holster. And again, just something that's just not needed to happen. I prefer to have these belt hangers down to where when your belt snugs up tight, the belt is actually coming across the holster there. So I pulled the claw off. Unfortunately, the holster did not come with shorter screws in order to allow me to do that easily. So I took the screws that were mounted in here and cut them about half their length, so that when I took the claw bracket off, the screws did not extend too far into there. Now, just while we're here on the belt hanger, it would be nice if the belt hanger had a little bit of a bend in it right there, right where it comes up over the trigger guard, but this one does seem to work fine. Now, as you can see, here is the thick rubber part that you tighten down or loosen to adjust the tension on the holster. And well, that works good. I do think that could actually be moved and relocated underneath this mounting screw right here. And by moving that rubber mount there and using that to be your tensioner, we could thereby basically trim back this whole additional piece here, and thus reduce the width here of the holster. Now those are just minor issues. Now what I do run into is more of a more significant issue is that, like I said, with a larger holster, this needs to be as slim and as compact as possible. Well, the way the belt rides through this here, it runs right over the slide release relief. These little relief pockets that are for the slide releases on the Walther PPQ. These slide releases right there that are ambidextrous on both sides. And what that means is, well, if we measure the width of the holster here without the relief spots for the slide releases, we find that the width of the holster there is 1.33 inches, which is not a whole lot more than my Springfield Armory Hellcat's holster. But if you check across the these reliefs for the slide releases, the width is 1.65 inches, which is 1/3 of an inch thicker. Now you think that, you know, 1/3 of an inch is not much, but that definitely, when it's in between your belt and your body, and it's pushing a gap out between your body and your pants, basically, makes it considerably more noticeable. And the worst part is that these slide reliefs here in the holster are too long. They extend down too far. They extend down way farther than they actually need to. Now you can see here is the slide release, and then it stops right there. Well, the holster has actually extended the slide relief on down to about right there. And so what I've done is, on this holster, I've actually marked on that slide release where the slide release actually stops. So you see it extends almost an inch further than it needs to be. And if that were properly sized, if you could eliminate that 1 inch additional extension of this slide release relief, then our belt and pants would run smoothly across there and would not have that wide gap in your pants. It would just push that gap up higher more against your body and outside and above the pants, so it wouldn't be so consequential. Now, when I went to notice that or went to measure and mark that the depth of the slide reliefs here, I found, surprisingly, that I wouldn't have noticed it otherwise, but that one side is actually about 1/4 of an inch deeper than the other side. So it's not perfectly symmetrical. And like I said, I wouldn't have, if it hadn't been for the fact that I was checking this in comparison how deep these slide releases on the PPQ are, I probably wouldn't have noticed that. But it is just something, you know, ideally those would be symmetrical, just, you know, for a matter of craftsmanship. Now what I think, in fact I'm thinking of modifying this holster, is that one is, I think rather than using a relief in the Kydex, I think it would have been better just to cut that out to relieve that for the slide releases. Could do that on both sides. And then what I can do is I'll see if I can use a heat gun, heat this up, and compress this part that's extended up back down flat, or at least in shape with the rest of the holster. And I'll do that on both sides. Now on this side we do have an extended sweatband that extends up higher than it does on this is a left-handed holster, by the way. And so I may end up, if I do the cutout there for the slide release, then, you know, that's going to be a fairly long slide release cut, so I may end up just cutting off the sweatband portion as well. Now other than that, the holster is I like the trimming. The edges are all nicely trimmed and finished nice. There's no rough or sharp edges anywhere around the holster, so that's good. Reflects well on the quality holster. But other than that, I think it's just simply poor design as far as bringing those slide releases, the reliefs, down too deep, making them actually probably even too wide, because the slide releases actually on the Walther PPQ are actually pretty thin. They're, you know, about half the width of a pencil. So these reliefs in here are really actually a little bit too big. They don't need to be that big. But I'm thinking if we just cut that out, do a cutout for the slide release, and then use a heat gun, flatten that back out. We'll see. We'll give it a try and see if we can make this into a decently working inside the waistband holster for the incredible Walther PPQ M1 Classic. Now, one cool thing, and I've mentioned this in many other videos before, one of the reasons I like the Walther PPQ, of course, is the paddle magazine release. And then once that's holstered, your magazine release is completely protected. and no amount of impact on the side is going to generate an accidental disengagement of your magazine. So that's one of the big advantages of the paddle magazine release. Plus, it also allows pinch operation, so that when you're doing a magazine ejection, you want to drop a magazine, you can pinch, and if you need to shake a magazine out, you've got a firm grip on the pistol while doing that. And then of course the other thing for me is that it's fully ambidextrous. No matter which hand you have or operating from, the magazine release operates identically in either hand. And of course I am running a left-handed holster, and that is because once you become ambidextrous, in my view, once you're completely ambidextrous left and right, then left-handed for primary carry makes sense. That leaves your right hand free for punching, fighting, knife, whatever, balance. And then your left hand can be your gunfighting hand. Now, a couple of reasons. One is if you are a motorcyclist, you can ride a motorcycle and then draw with your left hand while you're operating a motorcycle. Your right hand is definitely needed to run the motorcycle, given that the throttle and front brake are on that side. You can ride a motorcycle one-handed doing that, but you couldn't, if you're on a motorcycle and you need to draw right-handed, it's going to be hard to do. Now, the other thing is if you're in law enforcement, left-handed presentation of the firearm means that you have a better angle during traffic stops on the driver. So that's another advantage. So anyway, so I'll do some follow-up here. We'll do some work on this holster, see if we can make it work, and I'll do a follow-up video if it proves successful. All right, so we begun the modifications of our Dara holster for the Walther PPQ. What I've done is for starters, I removed the sweat guard here on the inside. I cut it down to the same height as the outside of the holster, and then cut the slots in both sides to match up with the slide releases on the Walther PPQ. Now what I have left to do is and I've never done this before, but I'm going to use a heat gun, heat this Kydex up inside and out a little bit, and then press that down back flat. So wish me luck. Okay, so we'll start with the inside. We'll assume that I can screw this up a bit and then maybe do better on the outside. So we've got our trusty Ace Hardware heat gun here. I'll fire it up to high for just a second on it and work the inside and out. And turn it back to low. Understand we don't want to overheat it or it'll kind of eliminate the texture. It's kind of almost flattening out on its own. Okay, it's nice and soft. And we'll use the pistol as our mold. And definitely I understand you wear gloves for this to want this down flat and as tight against that as possible to reduce the amount of girth. Hit this. So we can see that that is now hugs the pistol much closer, and we can see we've still got the other side to flatten out that channel on this side as well. Feels like it's back to its solid state. Repeater, start again just like I did before. A little bit of high, just to get some quick heat on it. Back it off, down to low. I'll watch for that to kind of melt away, or to kind of take that crease out of that, where that slide, the relief channel for the slide release was at. Looks like we're there. Get those edges down tight and flush. Kind of rub that heat away. See, there's a little bit of a slight bulge there where the pivot for the slide release is at, and on each side. But that's definitely, we've probably narrowed that down by close to 1/3 of an inch. And then now once a belt goes through here, that'll cinch down tight. Just pull down tight against the main body of the holster and pull everything nice and flat. Okay, so after reforming away those relief channels for the slide releases on the Walther PPQ, the width is now 1.45 inches with the holstered pistol in it. And that's a reduction of almost 2/10 of an inch. But it is still 2/10 of an inch greater than the width of the Hellcat with its holster. So the savings is definitely noticeable. But so is the difference between the holstered PPQ and the holstered Hellcat. And you can see visually see the difference in the width, of course the height as well, but the width is what we're trying to get shrunk down here. Now, one thing I did notice is that the thickness of the Kydex on the Desante Slim Tuck holster is 0.06 of an inch. It's pretty thin stuff. Whereas the Dara Kydex is 0.115 inch. So if this holster, the Dara holster, were using the thinner Kydex, that would shave another 1/10 of an inch off overall of the overall width. narrowing the gap between the holstered PPQ and the holstered Hellcat. And while the thicker Kydex is certainly justified for outside the waistband holsters, I think the thinner Kydex would suffice for inside the waistband. It's Mark Laughlin with Ambidexter Gunfighter. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.